Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today we're in San Diego, California, with a guy who is a visionary in the sport. He's created a lot of things. He's changed the sport. He's still active, everything running. Today, welcome on the podcast, Tracy Sundlun. Hi, Tracy.
How are you?
Great. Let's tell people your origin story. A lot has been published. People recognize your name. A lot of runners will be familiar with the rock and roll racing series. You've been in a lot of Olympics, a lot of things, but it all started when you were a kid. What is your origin story with getting involved with track and field and running? That story about the discus.
People all the time ask me what my event was. And I said, no, I didn't have an event. I was a chubby white Jewish kid. I went straight into management. Actually, it was just plain lucky. My father was a very good track athlete. He jumped 23.9 in the long jump in 1939 in high school. So he was destined to go at that national Olympic level. And then, of course, the war, etc. But I think I was always competitive with him. So I loved track. How could I live up to him being really slow as molasses? I had an eye for it, but I was an age group tennis player in Washington, D.C. And I'd win the little local tournaments at the top of my age group, and I'd be a quarterfinalist or a semifinalist at the bottom. I'm 12 years old. I won this tournament at St. Albans School. Oh, at the same time, I should say I had a terrible temper. I'd just as soon throw the racket as hit the ball. So I won this tournament. I'm feeling my oats. I walked back to my junior high school, Sidwell Friends School, and I saw a discus thrower. And it just struck me he was doing it wrong. Not that, what did I know? Yet I always had an eye for movement. And I just won this tournament. I'm feeling my oats. I excused myself and told him what I thought. And he was nice. He tried it. It worked. Then it turns out that he was already the city record holder. And I started to go to track practice after tennis practice the following Monday. His name was Pete Donovan. And I met all the right people at the right time who didn't say, oh, you stupid young kid. What do you mean you want to coach or you want to do this? Ed Rice was my sixth grade teacher. He had been a track captain at Andover. He was a coach at Sydney. He welcomed me. And right down the street, St. Albans, where I lived, Brooks Johnson was coaching Sports International Track Club at St. Albans. I just walked down and asked if I could be his gopher, if I could help. He didn't say, back in 20 years. He said, sure. And then he just told me what to do.
Oh, what was involved? Were you like a sports manager, team manager? Looking back, what were you besides a gopher?
I don't even know we had the term manager back then. But yes, it grew into that sort of thing. But it was always leaning. And I didn't look to be a manager. I looked to be a coach. And I was always listening and watching from that perspective. And I think, particularly at Sports International, I was absolutely surrounded by some of the world's best athletes, male and female. Marty McGrady, the world record holder in the 600. Our men's mile relay won the indoor nationals. AUs, Esther Stroy, Jade Burnett, Rose Allwood.
When you started interacting with those athletes, how long did it take for you to have more impact? What were you seeing? Was movement part of things like hurdling? How did that play into what you saw you would make an impact?
I wasn't thinking about it from that perspective. I never have worked a day in my life. My avocation became my occupation. So all you're doing is you're just enmeshed in it. And so you became a coach for the local youth games team, one little step at a time. I went off to, after the eighth grade, to prep school. And the coach there at Exeter Academy, Ralph Lovshin, he said, sure, come help. And the other coaching staff there, they just encouraged everything. I created the dorm Olympics at, at Exeter, multi-sport stuff.
Is that
And
still going?
I have absolutely no idea. It's been a ride. But the beauty of not being a great athlete, not even a good runner, was I didn't grow up at any point thinking that this was the one way and only way to do things. So when you're looking at a half miler or a discus thrower or a hurdler, oh, so Brooks did it this way. Yeah, but no, Fred did it this way. And I think this athlete falls more into that category. And you're trying to match up mindset. And so many great athletes, they come to coaching and they coach as they succeeded and as they were
Yeah.
coached. When the athlete has the same physiology and psychology as they did. And it's a disaster when they don't. Even some of the worst coaches that I observed or came across, you learn things from. And for that one guy, no, what he did makes sense. And so I was truly blessed. And then you just have athletes walk in the door that you cannot screw up, that just have God's gifts. And then they continue to open up other doors. I'm 20. I wound up being an assistant coach, a student coach at Georgetown. Well, the backup is part of that process. Growing up in the summer, I worked for the Parks Department in Washington, D.C., and we created the Mayor's Athletic Clinic. Probably the first thing that I created. And what was that? 8 sports in the 4 different districts of DC at 8 different parks and recreation facilities in each quadrant. The sport would circulate. Each sport would be in 1 week at one rec center and then move to another rec. The counselors, the teachers, the coaches, they were high school stars or high school players in that district. So there was some name recognition.
Yeah.
And it was a success. People liked it. I was obviously much more involved in the running one.
This is before internet. How did that communication work? Was all those groups? You're across the city, across facilities, across sports, so the athletes don't all know each other.
You read the paper, you knew Dwan Joyce, he was a star at this school. Gee, call him up. I don't know. I'm still not good on the internet. Somehow this thing happened, whether you were reaching out through the local coaching associations or whatever. This was in the summer of my senior year, high school. I'm about to go off to college, and my father runs into the mayor of Washington. The mayor compliments my dad on what I'd been doing. I don't know how he knew. And he asked, where's Tracy going to college? At that point, I was thinking to go to USC. This is at the end of the summer, Labor Day weekend,
What year?
1970, again, to go pursue track. The mayor says to my father, no, he should stay here in Washington, D.C. He's doing such great work. So dad tells me this. I said, you're serious? Really? That Tuesday, I went down to Georgetown and I walked into the admissions office. And I said, can I go to school here? And they said, sure. Come back in October. We'll start the process. I said, no, I want to go now You can't go now. School's about to start this week. No, I want to, and this is why. Sorry, can't do anything about it. So, well, somebody's got to be able to help me or say yes. And I said, I guess you could talk to the dean. Where's he? His office is down the hall. I walked down the hall, knocked on the door, and guy answers. I says, are you the dean? I can see him, but I can't remember his name. This is something that happens with age. And I told him the same thing. He said the same thing back. God, we'd love to have you. Not that he knew any reason. I said, no, I got to go now. And this is why. And he said, well, you can't. This is. And I started a passion speech. And he said, hey, look, I'm going to lunch right now. Come with me. And we're talking. I can't go and tell you all the things because I'd get everybody in trouble. But suffice it to say, I was accepted we went to lunch in the cloisters, and I have a mouthful of leg of lamb, mint jelly, peas and mashed potatoes, and was accepted. I had very good board scores. I had very poor grades that got worse and worse every year. And off I go to Georgetown following week, proceed to get a 1.4 and a 1.3.
Ouch. Yeah.
No, I didn't even bother to go to the exams. I was into the classes, but I really was completely into my track and field and coaching the clubs and this and that. Sports International. Then we started a club, DC Striders. And I realized that we couldn't keep going like that. So I went to Frank Rienzo, who was the coach at Georgetown at the time. I said, hey, look, I'll be your assistant. Just give me a scholarship. But on one condition. I have to get a 3.0 each year for you to pay the scholarship. He agreed. Perhaps he agreed because my high school team had beaten Georgetown in the mile relay. And so we had some good kids that were all training there too. And that's exactly how we played it out. We started in the fall of 71, went through 72 at Georgetown. And again, if in the right place at the right time, it's the summer of 72. We've got our DC Strider track club. At practice one day, we have a hammer thrower from Dartmouth named Bill Deneen. And we're out in the field. And he's throwing, he's about a 212 guy. Back then, about fifth in the country. And the Olympic team, you're only going to take one. You weren't very good. And this woman comes walking across the field, yelling, Selen, Selen. And I said, no, Sundlun, Sundlun. And she says, Selen, Selen, pointing at Bill. She explains that Bill's mom, her grandmother was Selen. He's from Puerto Rico. They want him to throw for Puerto Rico.
Right.
So we go down and talk this out with Bill right there. And he says, shoot, chances of my making the U.S. team are slim and none. Why not? His first meet, he broke the Puerto Rican national record by 65 feet. But at about the same time, at the end of the year, a quarter miler triple jumper at Arizona State, Pennsylvania, named Maurice Peoples. He's the last qualifier in the trials in both the 400 and the triple jump. And he's not honestly good enough in Arizona State's eyes for him to stay there and train. And they say, look, here from Willing, Pennsylvania, God, again, blank on names, begins with W. Go down to DC and train with the DC Striders. And Tracy shows up. He introduces himself. They say, all right, now, what events do you do? I do the quarter and the triple jump, sir. Huh, not anymore, you know. I don't know shit about the triple jump. You just became a full-time quarter miler. That summer, we have nothing but rain in DC. And so we're essentially training indoors, running up steps, running around basketball floors, trying to change his form. we're making good progress and trying to get his mindset together. And back then, the men's and women's trials were at different times in different locations. And so we're going off to the women's trials. I told him to go over to Spingarn High School. I think that's where it was, which is the only school that had a track above water, high ground. And remember, this is before they ever heard of tartan and before they ever heard of Mondo and Rakuten. I says, I want you to go and do 5 50-second quarters. It's the same workout that Lee Evans had done prior to winning in 1968. He could do it, then you're going to feel like you're in that level. Okay. So he goes the workout. He goes 51-7, 51-6, 51-3, 51-5, 51 something. We speak that night on the phone. He's just completely shattered. So it doesn't make any sense, but hey, I'll be home tomorrow. Relax, go do this, go do that, and then we'll go see you when I get back. Let's not despair too much. We get back. He looks great. I said, let's go do that workout again. That's a nice day. And he looks brilliant. Yet the time's 51-3. I go down at the 200-meter mark and I time him. He's going by 22 high. But it's still 51 point. Then I go and I walk the track. And then I go walk it again. It's 430 meters, 470 yards. No one ever said that the track was long. It was around a football field, around whatever fields they had. It was in a stadium. So, yep, he'd been running his 48-second quarters.
Wow.
Off we went to Eugene. Nobody knew his name. He's the man in red. He got lucky. His hero was John Smith. He got plugged, just outside of him. And I told him, wherever John goes, you go. He goes to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. With 40 meters to go, take a breath and lift, and you'll win. Oh, man. Yeah, you think so? Yeah, yeah. His PR going in was 46-2. He does exactly that. He runs away from John in the last 40 meters. He runs 45-8. John, of course, came off the turn. He looks around. He's qualified for the next round. He lets up. Maurice doesn't thinking like, so he goes through, and every round he grew in confidence to the point that now all the other guys were going to talk bad in his ear. So I pulled him out from the dorm, booked a room elsewhere, kept him away from all these other guys talking in his ear, talking trash. And he wound up getting 5th in the final, running another PR down to 45-2, 45-1, something like that. Back then, only 4 made the team, but one of the favorite, Fred Newhouse, had gone out like a rocket and died like a rock. Over the summer, they're talking about adding him to the team and the relays, et cetera, et cetera. People had been hurt. And I called up and said, you can't go over one guy. So Maurice made the team. We're off in Munich. Bill's with the Puerto Ricans. Maurice is with the U.S. group. And
Who were you with? Who were you
at that
officially?
point, I'm with nobody.
Really?
there just
I
trying to help
thought you
my
were part
guy.
of the Puerto Rican team. Okay.
I was there just trying to help my guys.
Ah.
But then the assistant coach from Puerto Rico has some problems back at home and has to go home. And they don't have a coach. And Bill said, Tracy's here. And my high school team had beaten their national team in the New York relays. I said, well, sure. Ask him if he'll help. So again, the right place at the right time. 20, the youngest Olympic coach
Yeah.
in history. And it was a remarkable time. Unfortunately, Maurice in the end didn't get to run because in the finals of the 400, we have three people in there: Vince Matthews, Wayne Collette, and John Smith. Lee Evans is our fourth. They go 1-2. Vince wins. Wayne is second. John Smith pulls up the hamstring. And then on the award stand, Vince and Wayne are hanging out, enjoying themselves. And this is 72 after the 68 award stand protest. They weren't protesting, but nevertheless, they weren't showing the quote proper decorum, and they were bounced from the games by Avery Brundage and company. You turn in your relay card, which then had 6 people on it. In this case, it's 48 hours before the relay trials, which was the night before the 400 final. All of a sudden, we have 3 people on our relay card that are not eligible. U.S. filed protests or appeals. They tried to add a decathlete quarter miler to the deal. They eventually went and said, look, you name whoever's allowed on our team. We went the morning of the trials to the 4x4. We went to check in not knowing what the end result was. I can still remember it looking up. USA 9. So he didn't run.
What'd you think of Avery Brundage?
I didn't know enough, clearly. I didn't think in those terms, man. I never thought about administering. I never thought about anything other than the coaching side. So all of a sudden, we have the Olympic massacre.
This is crazy.
Back then, my view, yes, I'm Jewish. Yes, all of this stuff has huge implications, even further into my life. But then all we're doing is focusing, okay, they're postponing, are they canceling the games? Are they postponing the games? What are they doing? What is it? How does this impact my athlete, our athlete, training wise, mindset wise? This is all transactional. It's all totally focused, keeping the noise, the non-physical running stuff out of the picture. Maybe I remember being interviewed on whatever television station with several others. So it was a very transactional piece. Did I think about Avery Brundage then? No. Did I think about any piece? For years, I never would have dreamt of putting on events or being an administrator. It was all about performance.
How did you handle that? Okay, you're a kid when you're growing up with your dad as your earlier role model competing. How did you view competition then? Now that you've at an earliest age at the biggest track meet in the world and having this impact, what goes through your mind in terms of competition, personal, and how you viewed the success? Maurice didn't get to run. How does that affect you, and how do you coach athletes through their goal meeting or goal failing?
The coaching thing is always a one-on-one deal, trying to grow the athlete physically, emotionally, mentally to their ultimate potential. Candidly, that's both on and off the track. You and I, when we went to high school, another digression here, you got to high school by osmosis before you went left or right. And in all cases, that going left or right was virtually, in all cases, based on some interaction you had with some extracurricular activity, whether it be sports or music or art or whatever, right? Over the years, that positive intervention, that moment has gotten earlier and earlier
Right.
in a kid's life now, and got to a point where, wait, if it's happening in fifth grade, they don't have extracurricular activities. They don't have out of school, in school sports programs. Gets to third grade, it's just getting earlier and earlier. And now we're seeing the social media and all the other things that are at play. But to my mind, athletics, when done right, are this absolutely wonderful academic and social tool. When I say done right, you don't just yell go, throw out the ball, and congratulate the winner. No. And track is the easiest, maybe swimming too, but is the easiest sport to translate. Yes, son, you're right. You were still last. Yes, you've been working really hard in practice, but you ran faster than you ever have before. Yes, son, you ran slower this week, but you beat somebody you've never beaten before. So the practice, it is working. And now we translate those very tangible results you get on the athletic field into a classroom and to going to doing your homework, etc. Now, I've never coached a quote team sport. I've approached track and field and running as a team sport, but I don't know how I would coach football or basketball or the like. Hey, you did better, the guy's defensive tackle, than you did in the past. How do you measure that? And then when you translate coaching, at some point, I lived every day for coaching. I woke up thinking about it. I woke up thinking about the workouts that day. Then it got to a point where maybe I started to think about the workouts at 11, or maybe at 1, 2, or when I started to run to practice, or maybe when I got to practice. It didn't consume me. At some point, it began to transition into them putting on events, the administration. I could coach 20 kids or 30 kids. I put on a great event and create a great program. I got 20 or 30 schools or teams. I can help thousands if we created the right thing. So that's
Yeah.
transitional.
Yeah. It seems like evidence of the way you've done things is to impact a lot of people, regardless of their talent level inborn, to have an impact with them. As you transition to more events, organizing events, when did your vision get bigger than the next event or the one I've created plus one more? When did it grow to this thing that you're creating innovations and the sport changing by 1980 when you got involved in things that changed the way money was presented to athletes? How about that? What did you think you were taking on as you're part of that?
At no point, whether it was women's sports, whether it was the money, whether it was chiropractic or any of these things, did I think I was, oh, we need to go tackle that. All of a sudden, you're just in the middle of it. The women's thing, before we get to money. After I come back from the Olympics in 72, Title IX hadn't happened yet. And I'm surrounded by these women, and we got to have women's college scholarships. I determined, well, we have to sue to get them. And I didn't have the same job they had a change in coaching stuff at Georgetown. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to find a place to sue to get women's college scholarship. I got 3 different choices. You had to find a school where the track coach would be into doing that, the men's track coach. And that school also then had to have an athletic director that would support that.
Right.
I could only think of 3 schools out there where that was the case. Texas El Paso with Wayne Vandenberg, Arizona State, Baldy Castile and Dick Purcell and my relationship with Maurice, and then Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with Linda Huey, who had been on our track team at Sports International. At that point, there were only scholarships at some historically Black colleges. And the women's collegiate governing body was the Division of Girls and Women's Sports.
Huh.
So off I'd go. I'd have a brief stop at Fisk, where one of my Coolidge athletes, DC Strider athletes, was a freshman. Then we go to El Paso, and El Paso's fine. It would work, but it was El Paso. I don't know how to describe it. This is right before Thanksgiving. On we drive to Phoenix, Tempe. And about 30 miles outside of Tempe, what is that smell in the air? And this is 1972. It gets worse. And I arrive and I walk into the office, Baldy and Dick and Maurice. And what's that smell? Oh, yeah, it's only there every fall and every spring. Don't worry, you get used to it. What's the smell? Oh, they're fertilizing the valley. This is when it was just, there weren't golf courses everywhere. I said, no, I can't get used to that smell because it smelled like shit.
Yeah.
And off we went to Cal Poly, and that's where we sued using a woman named Patrice Donnelly, Olympic hurdler, as our test case. And it turns out we were the second suit behind some tennis players in Florida. But again, it just seemed like the right thing to do.
What
You
was
know,
your pitch? Who did you have to sell on the end? Was the athletic director at Obispo in? Did you have to sell this? Did you tell them what could happen? How?
I remember that deal tape. I don't remember those.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it had to make some sense.
Did you think you'd win that first lawsuit?
Candidly, in all these cases, it never dawned on me that you'd lose because it was right.
That comes across from you that these obstacles are just, let me talk to somebody. There has to be a way to fix this and make it right.
And I don't remember anything about the details of what we did. And maybe we got to the point and somebody else had already done it. We didn't. Chiropractic was really the next piece. I'm coaching after Cal Poly. We had the San Luis Obispo Track Club. I took over the job at La Jolla Track Club here in San Diego when Bill Courts retired, and bring those girls down from San Luis Obispo. And we had one young lady that wanted to join us, named Kathy Lawson, a sprinter from Massachusetts. And she was very good. And I wanted her. She says, look, I have to have a chiropractor. Because she had some very strange body types, body issues. And I said, chiropractor, they're freaking quacks. Why would you do that? What do they do? She says, hey, you want me? I got to have one. I say, all right, where do I find a chiropractor? I figured I called up hers, a guy named Dr. Henderson, and give me a name out here that does what you do. They gave me a name. It was in Pasadena. And I call him up. His junior partner, his assistant, for lack of a better word, answered the phone. And I asked for whoever it was. He said, oh, he's away for a couple of weeks. So I got to talk to him. This is what the issue was. Do you have anybody that does what you do down in San Diego? He says, no. Oh, come on. It can't be that complicated. Well, we're doing all this new stuff, blah, blah, blah. Meridian therapy and kinetic therapy and a variety of things. Again, I'm forgetting names, my brain. I said, well, I got to see him. I said, we won't be back. Hey, look, I do the same thing that he does. I said, but you're not him. I was given his name. And you all are quack. Um, he says, hey, look, come up and see me. What's the worst thing that can happen? If it doesn't work, I'll undo it. The fellow I'm talking to is Dr. Leroy Perry. So out Kathy comes and up we go. I saw stuff that I've never seen before in my life. It was unreal what Leroy was able to do. I was just astounded. Since we'd driven up after practice and he'd stay late, we went to dinner at Coco's. Essentially, I said, you can do this all the time? Yeah. Because, you can never fail. This is MDs, doctors. Oh, if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. No, chiropractic won't have that room for failure. This is no, I understand. Because if we can do what I can teach you the sport, we can change the sport.
And 1 hour? How long was that session that completely changed your view?
That first one was like an hour and a half or so, whatever.
Yeah.
But you saw things that one had never, ever seen. Obviously, you see them a lot these days. But this was the fall of 73. And we started it every week. I took a motorhome full of the girls after practice, drove them to Pasadena, and he worked on them. Our first indoor meet, I'm taking Kathy and a woman named Patty Van Woebel there, Patty Johnson at the time. No, Patty Van Woebel at the time. Too many names she's had. And we drive up there, get treated, go to the airport, fly to Pocatello, and they both set world records.
Wow.
In the spring of 74, we introduced it big time. I had a clinic that Patty organized at Merritt Costa College. Wilt Chamberlain was there, who was my sponsor, my best friend at the time. And Al Feuerbach, world record holder in the shot, John Powell, Olympic medalist in the discus, Tommy Lee White, hurdles, Arnie Robinson, would be an Olympic champion in the long jump, Steve Williams, world record holder in the 100, Francie LaRue, world record holder in mile, Cindy Gilbert, Olympian in the high jump.
They were all chiropractic users?
No, these were all athletes. These
Okay.
were all world-class athletes that were at this clinic. That they had never, other than Patty and my people, had never seen chiropractic, but we had them all there. There's 500 people in the room, in the gym. We have Al Feuerbach on a chair in front of them. And Leroy, essentially, this is the world record holder in the shop by working acupressure pressure points and meridian therapy and the like. He had him in front of 500 people where he cannot even lift his right arm. He is completely weakened him. And he puts him back together. Dwight Stones was also there, the high jumper. This was remarkable moment. And Leroy was this remarkable touch point. The AMAs tried to sue us. They bugged our phones. They tried to keep insurance companies from covering it. It was a huge deal. At SC, and then in this period of time, after a couple of years, we move up to USC, where I'm an assistant coach there. We start taking our athletes there. The athletic department, the trainers staff says, you either go to those quacks out in Pasadena or you come here, but you can't do both. So the track team for a year didn't go into the training zone. We won the NCAAs.
Look, I don't ask you about this big event where you had track and field athletes. You had 500 of them in the room. How did you get them there? What was the draw?
It
What was
was at Miracosta College. Patty, there weren't 500 heavy duty athletes.
right?
There were students, et cetera, at Miracosta that were perhaps drawn by the moment and what was going on. I think the athletic director was Cindy Gilbert's dad. She was a teacher there, whatever. So they did the thing to the students. Patty and company and us, we got the athletes there. We're local, Southern California based, you know, and people had begun to hear about Leroy in that elite world. So
Mm,
it wasn't hard to get them there. So we had a petition at the Olympic trials in 76 to add Leroy to the Olympic staff. It was signed by every participating athlete and coach. And the USOC turned us down. Now, one of Maurice's teammates in DC was a guy named Fred Sowerby from Antigua. And he'd been calling me, Cohen, you got to manage the team. We got in the Olympics, but we need help. We need help. This was their first time. I said, no, I'm not. I'm into this. And we got turned down by the USOC. And that night, for whatever reason, I got a call from Fred asking me one more time if I would do this. I says, okay, under one condition, I get to name Antigua's sports medicine team, not just now, but in perpetuity, whenever I want. His response, who cares? So Leroy comes with us off to Montreal. It was pandemonium in so many ways. The world saw it. Half the U.S. team is in our Antigua suite.
yes.
And that's where it began. And at that level, oh, and here, being Antigua, what do we got? I don't know, 30 people, 20 people there. Hell, I can get infinity credentials from virtually anybody. So Leroy has this great credential. And here comes Irving Dardick, Dr. Irving Dardick of the USOC, across the practice field. And he's mad as hell because I'm standing with Leroy. And he grabs Leroy's credential. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Irving, hold on. What do you mean? What is he doing here? Let me see your credential. Leroy's allowed to be here. You're not. Security, security. Leroy never was on the U.S. staff, but uh,
And somebody
chiropractic.
contributed to the success in 76 then.
Well, that's where it started. Chiropractic is obviously a mainstay of sport for years. It all emanated out of Pasadena. There are good doctors, there are good surgeons, there are bad surgeons, there are good ear, nose, and throat people, there are good everything, and then there are poor ones. Leroy had gift that virtually no one else has ever had. He understood, he could see, look, he was just remarkably gifted, still a dear friend. But he opened up those doors and it was great. Every year you'd go to the annual AAU or USA track and field or athletics Congress meetings, and quality chiropractic was growing. It wasn't just in
Mhm.
Pasadena.
To 76 after the Munich massacre. As you said, you were looking at it as a track athlete, but it impacted your personal life in a bigger way with the relationship that you developed with another athlete. I want to hear what your memories are of that, of 76 before we move on back to US.
So in Munich massacre, people don't realize there was back then two villages, a men's and a women's village. The massacre took place in the men's village. One of the 11 killed was a coach, and he had a young sprinter hurdler that he had coached since she was 12, Esther Shamaru, and she was 17 or 18 at that moment. Her coach was killed, and she goes home to Israel crushed and quits. She like a couple years later, she meets a gym owner, Peter Roth, and gets married. And he encourages her to start training and competing again. In 74, for a sort of confluence of fortunate circumstances, another said, I'm in Israel, in Tel Aviv, and I give a clinic at the Wingate Institute in hurdling. I coached many of the better female hurdlers at the time. In addition to Patrice Donnelly, there was Patty Van Wolvelaar, Debbie Lansky, and Deanne Carlson, now Schatzer. So I give this clinic on hurdling, and Esther and Peter are in the audience, and we struck up a relationship, and she's starting to compete again or run again. 75, they come to the U.S., join the Maccabea Track Club in L.A., train with me, and off we go to the 76 games. And I'm with Antigua. They announced a few weeks out that Esther, a survivor from 72, is going to carry the flag for Israel in the opening ceremonies. It's hard to conceive of in this day and age, but immediately she started getting death threats.
Oh, wow.
You walk in that stadium, you'll be dead just like your coach. And basically said, F you, I'm doing this. And the drumbeat for the next few weeks was constant. The last threat was an hour before she walked into the stadium. While we're in the not gym, but the stadium, the nearby where all the athletes were holding. This is 1976. It's not like we got magnetometers at every entrance that you do in this day and age. You had security. There were sharpshooters that were in the light fixtures around the stadium in Puma uniforms with binoculars. Yeah, that was going to solve the problem. Anyway, I go on the field first with Antigua and Barbuda. And just by pure happenstance, Antigua and I are positioned dead in front of the tunnel that comes into the stadium at around the start of the 100 meters, where they walk around the track. And by pure, again, luck, Esther and I locked eyes 2 or 3 steps before she walked into the stadium. And her eyes were just wild. Was this going to be the next to last step of your life? She's got the flag in the holder around the neck. She takes it out, and she just takes one step. You just
And
you're going to
explode.
shoot me. You shoot me now. And I'm just focused entirely on her chest. Is it going to blow up? and it didn't. And everything was fine. The crowd went crazy.
Yeah.
And I can remember the performances of virtually every athlete that I ever dealt with. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back and looked it up. I keep forgetting it. I don't remember what time she ran in the
Mhm.
Olympic Games. She was sixth or seventh in the hurdles and set an Israeli record that lasted until a year or two ago. Uh, and she was a semifinalist in the 100. Memory serves me correct. That moment, that's my Olympic moment.
Yeah.
That woman, such courage, such everything. Every time I tell the story, the hair in the back of my neck comes up and I start to cry.
Yeah. Thank you for telling that. Yeah. 48 years later, I can tell it's still vivid in your memory. It's
I'm
amazing.
sure I've embellished it, but the God knows it's just the Olympics are something truly uniquely special. But sports are special. Forget the Olympics are
Yeah.
special because of the impact they can have in a much broader sense on society and on people. But a high school track meet, a local road race, on an individual basis, they have all the power and impact that the Olympics may have on an Esther.
It's interesting to talk about that, the politics then that people think that today is different. And really, there was still so much at play then. But the inspirational moment, yeah, that's what the Olympics has now. It's very dressed up, that those individual stories are remembered forever. Everybody in that stadium certainly has got to remember that moment. It's pretty cool you're telling and your particular experience of being there, knowing Esther and being at the right place at the right time. And that story, I was familiar with it a bit, but that interesting story of the impact of the massacre almost ending someone's career and then coming back. That is amazing story.
It and if she hadn't met Peter, my guess is that it doesn't happen. But did that did her story change the world? No. That Israel is back after such a thing? Yes, that was significant. The world and then and clearly Israel at the center of a lot of people's thoughts at this point. Do we know enough to make real judgment? No. Am I torn? Yes. But one of the interesting pieces, whether it's in 76, whether it was in 80, whether it's in 84, 90, 2000, 2010, we used to all get the same news. Other than the National Enquirer, we got the same news, and then they had an editorial section, or opinion section, where somebody could opine. But we
But
weren't
the facts were consistent. Yes.
at some point in the last decade or so, that's not the case anymore. I'm very involved right now in this whole fight over transgender athletes and protecting the women's sports space.
How's that evolved over time? What's your memory of how that has come and what were the missteps and the right steps and what's the future there, you think?
I've been involved in it for about 5 years now with a group of 5 women. We created something called the Women's Sports Policy Working Group. Amazing. Oh God, amazing women. I'm just a tool who happens to have known them all. Donald Lopiano was the first CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation. first female athletic director at Texas, a Hall of Fame softball player, I think in 4 positions. Um, Runs something called the Drake Group now. And Donna DiVerona, Olympic gold medalist, many-time world record holder in swimming, a Hall of Fame broadcaster, first president of the Women's Sports Foundation, a member of our USOPC board now, the most amazingly connected woman I've ever known. Nancy Hogshead Makar, Olympic gold medalist, 3-time over in swimming, on the Congressional Oversight Committee for the USOPC now, started something called Champion Women, led as a former rape victim, one of the most significant leaders in the state sport movement, helping set that up. Former pro basketball player, Stanford, a writer named Mariah Burton Nelson. Just flat out genius. And then a reasonable tennis player named Martina Navratilova, who everybody knows is this amazing tennis player. Oh, and then me, this amazing tennis player. What they don't know, and she never fails to just blow us away. So here you've got a Hall of Fame broadcaster. Here you've got a lawyer. Here you've got this great writer. Here you've got the head of the Drake thing. You know, all these heavyweights. And the lawyers put something into 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then the writers and the PhDs sum it down into Donna into a couple of sentences. And then Martina, without even thinking, puts everything to 8 or 9 words. That is just completely coalesces the moment. She's a genius. But how do we find a proper space for everybody in the social construct of sport, but while protecting the competitive areas of sport? And how do we protect the female category? It is absolutely critical. Oh, no, it's just a few. Those few, the numbers, the implications, the ramifications are so great when you start looking into the science. Originally, when we started this game, we all really believed that, hey, if you lowered your testosterone level to 5 nanomoles for a year per liter, you would clearly hurt your strength, your speed, your power, your endurance, all those elements. And yes, you do impact. But as the science kept going, no, it doesn't just start at puberty. Oh, and as Caitlyn Jenner said, you're right. In some states right now, I could have won the Olympic Games. I won the Olympic decathlon, 76. And then, hey, I could have said I'm a woman and I could have gone and competed in the, at that time, pentathlon, women's pentathlon the next day. Obviously wrong. But now, so I go and I change my physiology. I do all this stuff. I change my strength. I lower my testosterone levels, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? I'm still a 205-pound, 6'3". That's dangerous when you're, I still have advantages I can never take away. And then the science is, it starts in vitro, the differences. There's only one, and I can't remember what strange event it is, only one age group swimming or running record from age 5 up. When you compare boys and girls, it's held by a girl.
Perfect. Well, what do you think's going to happen? What is the timeline where consensus is going to cause consistency across the U.S., across international on this? What kind of timeline is this issue compared to how quickly women's sports, once it took action, once you went after the legal constructs, got things changed?
I honestly think that the tide is going very much in the right direction at this point. You've had a few seminal athletic moments. Leah Thomas Give me a large male swimmer that wasn't any good, put him in the female category. It was a perfect PR vehicle. Riley Gaines being the right adversary. This travesty of the boxing. Clearly, there's women that will never get the medals that they deserve, but enough people were drawn to the stupidity of that. But the science is so stark. Here, the two of us are not such good athletes. Our testosterone levels are between 7.7 and 29.4 nanomoles per liter. Doesn't make a difference what a nanomole is. I have no idea, but that's the standard. A woman's testosterone level is 0.6 to 1.68 nanomoles per liter. And whether you're an Olympian or not, those are the numbers. The highest value of any healthy woman ever recorded was a 2.0. That was an anomaly. So even when they were formally using 5 as your limit for track and field and a few other sports, hell, that's still 3 times more than the highest woman was out there.
Does your group have a proposal for a different class of athlete then that's going to be
We have a
created?
variety of proposals. You can go to our website at www.womensportspolicy.org. That's 2 S's in the middle. And you'll see a variety of things there, an outline of details and history and proposed legislation and such. The legislative issues are different, whether it's at the state level, the federal level, the like. I believe at least one thing the only thing maybe that I'm pleased about with the incoming Trump administration is they see this issue quite clearly. We do.
It's great talking with Tracy Sundlun. We talked for a lot longer on a lot more topics and a lot more of his history. Come back for part 2 with Tracy Sundlun. Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.